that STA 5 doesn't go anyplace. Okay, it's killed. The opponents have succeeded. But what have we really gained? Have we gained more opportunities?
Okay, please, quiet.
How are we gaining more opportunities when 10,000 admissions are going to out-of-state applicants and international students?
Thank you. Okay.
How are we gaining more? How are we gaining more opportunities? This is why. Wait, hold it. No. Foreign students and California and out-of-state students don't have high priority in my estimation. I'm a California taxpayer. You're a California taxpayer. We're the ones who support the CSUs and the UCs and community colleges. Our students come first. And we need to make sure that we have the resources there available for California students, because these are California institutions.
Thank you, Henry. I didn't want to bring this out earlier, but I think it was getting a bit out of control. So I came prepared. Thank you. So Senator Huff, would you like to address this?
I think we have to be very careful in this thing, but let's be clear. Nobody in this room introduced the bill. The bill is what introduced race as an issue, because it strives to strike race as a consideration on admission policies. So we didn't bring the argument. And when you do start to make decisions that include race as a criteria, you will be making what can only be described as discriminating choices. That may not be the intent, that will be the consequence. And I want to be real clear about this, because it's like a broken record in here. This is not about quotas. This is not about more funding. This is not about foreign students. STA 5 is, how do we choose the students that are going to go to our UC system, regardless of whether it's 2%, 9%, or 12.5%? How are we going to make that choice? That's what's before us. That's what the legislature will be voting on, and that's what we have to decide about how we lobby it.
You know, I want to second what Albert said earlier about, be careful about what you read and what you hear. Because this whole thing, I think, got started back in February 1, and I'll read you the headline of a Chinese language newspaper. There are too many Asians in UC. The Democrats wanted to set a quota for Asians. And then the subheading, the Senate had passed the STA 5, and the plan is to repeal 1996-209 proposition, and then to protect quotas for Hispanic and African Americans. That's how this whole thing got started. So you've got to, when you read something like this, you have to go to the source and find out. There's no byline in this article, no sources attributed here, and yet it's being reported as news. And this is how I think this whole movement got started. And I think we really have to think carefully. And what Henry said about race relations, race is a very, very touchy, politically, emotionally charged thing in our society. And it could be easily triggered into some, hysterical movement. And I hope that we are all very, calm people, and we're not going to be fooled, nor we're going to be misled by misinformation or disinformation.
Thank you for the comment.
Yes, so just to follow up on the professor, in fact, the passions that are aroused are because this is such a sensitive issue. And I wish Senator Hernandez would have thought of that before he introduced this amendment. And the problem is that once you start into this discussion, the underlying worldview that animates SCA 5 is that you allocate resources based on race and ethnicity, and ultimately preferences is what it evolves into, and that's a dangerous game to play. But to respond to one other point, which I think has to be made, there is an issue and there is a problem. The problem is the admission of African American students to the 3 flagship universities, which are lower than one would hope and one would expect. When you only have 201 blacks admitted to UCLA out of 4,100 freshmen, and at UC Berkeley 117 out of 3,000 freshmen, that's a problem. And the question is, do you need a constitutional amendment to begin to seriously deal with that problem and the underrepresentation? It needs some creative planning, which the UCs are trying to do, but it's a tough issue. Those are the 3, UCLA, Berkeley, and San Diego are the 3 schools where there is a serious underrepresentation of blacks from what one would expect from their percentage in the high school graduating class and those who qualified with the A through G requirements. So those are the 3 problem areas. Other than that, in almost all the UCs, virtually every minority group is represented appropriately, and if not doing very well, it's the whites who are underrepresented. That's not a particular issue that's a whole lot of people. But there are problems, but the answer is not a constitutional amendment to get rid of non-discrimination.
We'll come to a close of the questioning. Would each one spend about 3 minutes draw a conclusion upon what you heard today, what you intend to say to the audience? Let's start with from the other end, from Mr. Durr, and move back this way.
Well, I want to thank you all for listening to me. You may not have agreed with me.
3 minutes.
I appreciate your listening to me. I'd just like to say that Senator Hernandez did not consult with me when he developed his bill. I see that there is a lot of room for this SCA to be improved, amended, and changed. I think the underlying intent is a good one, is that we need to have outreach and encourage all of our students to do the best that they can and to reward them with admission to UC and CSU if they meet the standards. And I think that's what we need to remember in this whole debate. And I respectfully disagree with my panel members, at least 2 of them. This should not be a zero-sum game. And politically, it does come down to that from a political perspective. Because if opponents feel that this is going to be a quota against Asian applicants and it's going to be given to something else, of course you have every right to be concerned about this. And I think this is why we need to get clarification from Senator Hernandez as to what is the intent and what needs to be done with the language of the bill, and not rely on someone else's interpretation. So I would encourage everybody to be in touch with Senator Hernandez and to participate in the legislative hearings so that there is a debate going back and forth as to what it is, and not to assume certain things about what this amendment may or may not do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Henry. Mr. Weber,
Yes, I'll be brief. I just want to reiterate what I've said before. I think it is a flawed bill. I think that the worldview that underpins the bill is flawed. I think that for the most part, the UCs and the CSUs have done an outstanding job in keeping and maintaining and increasing the diversity on their campuses without resorting to what existed prior to Prop 209. I pointed out the 3 areas where there are problems: UCLA, Berkeley, and San Diego with regard to African American students. That does need attention and work. But the solution that this bill offers is a solution that is dangerous, that is just poorly thought out, and I suspect that were it to come on the ballot, it will be rejected out of hand by the people of California.
I agree with Mr. Laird, believe it or not. The SCA 5 is flawed. I think it needs to be changed. And that's why I had gone up to Sacramento to talk to various legislator to try to persuade him to make some changes there. But I think, there's a bigger battle for all of us. And I think we should bear that in mind. The University of California has become increasingly privatized. I don't know if you can notice this or not. It cannot hardly be called a public university anymore. Because a campus like Berkeley, my own campus, and I love my campus because I spent all my life teaching there, we only get about 10% of our annual expenditure from the state of California. The rest of the 90% come from other sources. And also, our tuition is going up every year. And a lot of people have become not very affordable anymore. So I think that we need to...
Please, it's okay. Please let him finish.
I think that we need to fight for the revitalization and the recommitment of the master plan so that more and more people will have opportunity to get into UC. Because the pie is going to get smaller and smaller if we don't increase that piece of pie.